In search of the wild ponies of Ocracoke. First of all, there is no longer a herd of free-roaming wild ponies on Ocracoke Island, North Carolina. The Cape Hatteras National Seashore, though, has opted to maintain a small herd of wild ponies who are descendants of those who once roamed free. These special ponies live in a pen enclosure of 188 acres, serving as a living history exhibit. It is one of the main attractions on the Outer Banks. If you look at a map of the North Carolina coastline, you will see a long chain of barrier islands. They are simply called the Outer Banks. There are wild horses in Corolla to the far north, Ocracoke Island halfway down, and to the far south, Shackelford Banks. Ocracoke Island is part of the Cape Hatteras National Seashore, while Shackelford Banks is part of the Cape Lookout National Seashore. The history of the Outer Banks dates back to Native American inhabitants, early European explorers, and then early European settlers. Because of the challenges of this remote area, the population of people remained small. Sprinkled with pirate legends and shipwreck stories, this area really only developed until Highway 12 was built during the late 1950s and early 1960s. The popular and prevailing thought is that the horses who roamed these banks swam ashore from shipwrecks. However, most wild horse historians concede that people often left behind their livestock when they moved on. Hence, sheep, cattle, pigs, and goats were also free roaming the banks. Cape Hatteras National Seashore quietly opened in 1953 and was officially dedicated in 1958. Actually, the CHNS was on the drawing board back in the 1930s when residents saw the massive development in other coastal areas and wanted to keep their homeland pristine. Throughout the 30s, 40s, and 50s, the government purchased land to create the park and recreational area, aided by a wealthy philanthropist who donated large sums of money to the cause. Today, the CHNS consists of 8 villages under private ownership and several wildlife refuges. It is 148 miles long, including 2 ferry operations which connect Highway 12 and a 3rd ferry which serves Ocracoke from Swan Quarter on the mainland. In the 1800s, it was reported that 200 to 300 wild ponies roamed Ocracoke Island. Just like in Chincoteague, Virginia, the Outer Banks residents held roundups, rodeos, branding activities, and sales. This happened every July 4th, with the roundup starting on July 3rd. This activity dwindled and died out during the 1940s as World War II unfolded, and in 1935, free-roaming livestock was outlawed on Hatteras Island. Livestock was sold off during this time, and some of their ponies were taken to Ocracoke. By 1939, there were 50 to 100 ponies in Ocracoke, where people and ponies coexisted nicely. The ponies would come into the village and became neighborhood pets. It was not surprising then when Marvin Howard organized the first mounted Boy Scout troop in 1954. The boys each picked a wild pony to tame. The scout would ride his pony all summer and then would release him back to the wild when school started. Hundreds of stories are told about the famous troop, and even a book was written about them. The free-roaming ponies continued to come into the village, and they would often seek out their human comrades. With the coming of Highway 12, the locals feared for the safety of the ponies, and the scouts petitioned the government to build a large pen to keep them safe. The government then outlawed wild ponies along the entire Outer Banks, with the exception of 35 ponies belonging to the Boy Scouts and some down in Shackelford Banks. In 1959, the Ocracoke ponies were penned. By the mid-1960s, the Boy Scouts of America required each scout to have insurance, and this unique group dissolved. The National Park Service took over management of the wild ponies at this time. The 1970s were challenging years for the Ocracoke herd. Fertility issues plagued the animals, taking their numbers down to 9. A park ranger and his wife came to Ocracoke during this period and devoted themselves to saving the herd from extinction. Through outside breeding and veterinary care, the herd started coming back. In the 1980s, an Andalusian stallion from Spanish bloodlines was introduced to the island herd. Later, 2 stallions and 2 mares from Shackelford Banks were brought to Ocracoke, and then a stallion from Corolla came to the island. By 2010, there were 21 horses. In 2014, there were 18 horses. As of 2017, there were 15 horses with 1 pregnant mare. The compound itself consists of 10 corrals and 6 buildings. Horses are kept in separate corrals as a means of birth control. With a small herd, inbreeding could be devastating. Ranger Michaels explained to us that the herd has dwindled due to deaths and old age. The average age of current herd members is 24, which is comparable to 72 in human years. Paloma was born in 2010, and with a lot of publicity, she became quite a star. Tourists would even ask for her by name. All herd members receive regular feeding and vetting. Their lives parallel domesticated horses. They all can be haltered, but none of them has ever been ridden. During the summer months, the CHNS sponsors educational sessions for the public, allowing visitors to get up close to the fence. Otherwise, this fence is separated from the public viewing area by another fence. It is possible to walk along a boardwalk which parallels the wild pasture land. Information about the pony program is available on the island and online. It is possible to adopt a pony through the CHNS. Interested people who contribute money to the support of the ponies can claim they foster a wild pony on Ocracoke. Each horse costs about $400 per month to maintain, and donations do not cover all expenses. They are still in existence, though, because the local people love them as cultural resources of a bygone era on the Outer Banks. For those of you who go in search of these equine ambassadors, you will need to take a ferry ride, either from Hatteras to the north, from Cedar Island to the south, or from Swan Quarter to the west. Arriving from Hatteras via a free ferry ride of about 40 minutes, you will land in the undeveloped area of the CHNS. You will then drive approximately 13 miles on Highway 12 when you will see the sign for the pony pens. Both the Cedar Island Ferry and the Swan Quarter Ferry cost $15 for cars less than 20 feet and $30 to $45 for larger vehicles and trailers. Both ferries dock in Silver Lake, the small harbor of Ocracoke Village. We stay in one of the small hotels in Ocracoke and walk to various restaurants and pubs. The pony pens are approximately 3 miles northward on Highway 12. Ocracoke itself is about 16 miles in length. While in Ocracoke, most people like to visit the British Cemetery, a unique and historical site from World War II. Of course, the country's oldest lighthouse is in Ocracoke, but visitors cannot walk up this one. If you have time, we highly recommend taking a beach ride on horseback. Our guide took us along the back streets of Ocracoke on the way to the beach. We experienced a quaint village as well as a lovely and remote beach. The current population of Ocracoke Village is about 1,000 people. The Outer Banks is notorious for extreme weather and turbulent waters. Highway 12 has been compromised many times. In fact, in March of 2018, it was closed for several days due to storm overwash. However, Ocracoke is a special place that leaves visitors with special memories. As you gaze at the ponies who do not appear to be wild, you realize that they too are very special. As they gaze off into the distance with the wind ruffling their manes and tails, you can let the fencing fade away, along with hundreds of years.